Students, and welcome. We're going to talk today about the word regulate. Regulate is the academic word of the day for English 3. And so everybody try to pronounce this word. It's pronounced regulate. So the stress is on the first syllable, reg, and then it's not regulate, it's U. So that U says its name in the English alphabet, U. Regulate. It's like in Spanish, if it were like EU, regulate, regulate. And so this in Spanish it says controlar, but it's more specific than just control. I would say it is controlar, but it's a more specific form, specific meaning of that word. So I'll explain what I mean by that. So both definitions of regulate are verbs. And so if you look at the word regulate, R-E-G-L-A, that looks very similar to regla in Spanish, which is a rule. And that's not an accident. They come from the same root. I think probably in Latin is my guess, but they're related words. So if you think about when a regla is a rule, right? So in the same way, when you say regulate, that goes with our definition 1 here, which is to control something by means of rules. So it's not just control. It's not control like I don't know, if I'm trying to ride a horse and I want to control the horse, right? I wouldn't say, I pull on the reins to make the horse turn, right? I probably wouldn't say I'm regulating the horse because you can pull on horses, but I mean, you don't have written rules for horses. So regulate is only, for definition 1 here, is controlling by rules, using rules, reglas, rules. So regulate is used for situations like the government, for example, especially. So when the government makes laws to control something in society, we can also talk about, companies or organizations maybe regulating and by having rules to control something. We use this a lot when we talk about the economy, and we can talk about, for example, the government regulating certain companies or certain industries by giving them rules that they have to follow. That's definition 1. So this is all about, definition 1 is about companies or the government or some human organization controlling something using rules. Definition 2 is different. Definition 2 is not a person doing it. Definition 2 is more like in science, in nature, and it's just like sort of the natural laws or the natural rules that control something. So there's no person actually usually doing it, but it's just like the speed, the pressure, the temperature, or something. Or let's see. Oh, I guess in a machine it could be a person, but sometimes it's like just a natural system that controls itself. If it's in a machine, it means using these forces of nature like speed, pressure, and temperature to control something. So using like science like that, physics to control something. That's definition 2. So let's look at some. Let's see. Let's look at some sentences. So for the first definition, here we have control something by means of rules. So the government regulates expenses by charging its citizens a tax every year. So it makes sure that it controls the amount of money that it has by having a rule to control, to make people pay taxes. I was saying another good example of this would be like regulating an industry, like something like we can say the government regulates the food industry by requiring all the food companies, if you package food, you have to write the ingredients on the food and you have to say how many calories are in it and things like that. That the government does that. The government regulates the industry. 100 years ago, they didn't have those rules, and there were things like stories of people mixing things into food illegally. Um, People were mixing in like sand into flour and just all kinds of bad things like that because it was cheaper to put sand than to actually make the flour, things like that. Where now, because the government is involved and regulates that, it means that we have to have pure food that doesn't have other bad things mixed into it. That's an example of a good side of regulation, the government regulating. the government, some people say the government sometimes regulates too much. They have too many rules. But yeah, this is controlling something using rules. Okay, and then here's definition 2. This is a natural system. So it says the clouds in the atmosphere regulate the Earth's temperature by reflecting some sun rays out into space. So you can see here that some sun rays get into the Earth, but others get reflected out, and that protects our temperature. It also, there's like some bad radiation that could hurt us, that could give us cancer and lots of bad things that does not get into the Earth's surface because of the atmosphere. I guess not specifically the clouds, but the atmosphere. But here the clouds control the temperature of the Earth. And as I was saying, that for a machine, you would say something more like, you know, a person who's operating the machine regulates something like the speed of the machine by turning a switch or a knob or something, and that changes that physical property of the machine and makes it go a certain speed. Okay, so let's go back to here to word families. Deregulate and so regulate. So sorry, regulation is another word for like a rule, which goes with, you know, controlling something by means of rules. And then so to deregulate is the opposite of regulate. We could say deregulate is removing rules, having fewer rules. So usually, a lot of times, Democrats want to have more rules as a general. You know, if you're talking in general, Democrats want to regulate companies, and Republicans don't. They want to deregulate. They say companies can control themselves better than the government can. We should not get the government involved. So Republicans want to deregulate in the U.S. politics. Regulation is a rule. Regulated describes a situation where something has rules. Regulator can be a person who makes rules. I would say that's what I've heard the most. Maybe in a machine, it could be a part of a machine that controls the machine. Regulatory related to rules. Unregulated means not having any rules. So, like I was saying, a bad thing 100 years ago, food was unregulated, and so people were mixing poison, you know, bad things into food sometimes because it was unregulated. Synonyms for regulate, we have manage or organize. Antonyms, I just want to wait for that thing to go away. Antonyms, deregulate or disorganize. And finally, I'm going to give you the sentence that you would copy. This is the sentence that you would copy if you're making cards. So this sentence is, the state regulates what teachers teach to each grade level through the California state standards. That's true. There's a list that says all of us teachers have to teach these particular concepts to, well, it's like 9th and 10th grade, there are standards, and then 11th and 12th grade, there are standards. So you're in English 3, we have a list of everything we have to teach you, and we have to go through during the year and teach you that. So that comes from the state of California. So the state controls us, teachers, by regulating what we teach with these rules, the California state standards. So if you need to, you would copy that, as I said, if you're making a card. And let's go here to, this is a class activity. What is a synonym for regulate and what is an antonym for regulate? And so you could try to think of one, quiz yourself, and then go back and look. Well, let's go back and look here. Here are some synonyms and some antonyms. For students who are at home right now during the coronavirus school shutdown, you don't have to do that activity at the end with the questions. That's just for if we're doing this in class, like in a future year we would use it. Okay, thank you very much for watching. Have a good rest of your day.